Hey, what's up? My name is Kay Anagonio, and I am a freelance videographer and photographer, and this is Project Freelance. Welcome to the podcast. Happy Monday, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Project Freelance podcast. This week on the show, I am joined by Jordan Reopke. He is a wedding photographer, also based here in Tennessee. And I'm very excited to have him come on to share his story, his insights, and to share some of the things he's learned along the way while he built his business. The goal of Project Freelance is to help you guys skip the mistakes that we made as freelancers so that you can grow faster and scale your business much faster than maybe we did. Very excited to have Jordan on this week. If you guys are interested in following his journey, I have put his links down in the description, along with a couple of affiliate codes from Jordan that will help you in your journey. One of them is a storage, online storage software where you can deliver files to clients where they will be held in perpetuity, so forever. The second one he has is actually for an AI image culling software, and it's actually really sick. It's called Aftershoot. I had never heard of it until Jordan brought it up on the actually after the podcast, but I have put a link down in the description to Pixieset and Aftershoot. These are Jordan's affiliate links, so if you want to support him, you can do so that way. And if you want to hire him to maybe shoot your wedding, his website is also down in the description below. Along with those links are a couple links of mine. So I have affiliate links to gear recommendations that I have through Amazon, and I also have my website down in the description if you want to hire me to shoot some content for you or your company. Definitely do so. Check out the website, and if you're new to the podcast, consider hitting subscribe. And on Spotify, you can now leave comments, which is really cool. So if you are interested in giving some feedback, or if you want to maybe give us your own insights, there is a comment section on Spotify now. This is also available on the Project Freelance YouTube channel if you prefer to listen and watch your podcasts on YouTube. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let's jump in. Jordan, welcome to Project Freelance. Please introduce yourself and what it is you do to the audience here.
My name is Jordan Reopke. I am a wedding and event photographer based in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, about 45 minutes south of Nashville, depending on traffic. I've been doing this for the last 5 years or so. Really got going during COVID, which, as we all know, was a fantastic time to be a wedding photographer. I've had a great time doing it. My wife shoots with me. She's my partner in everything. And it's been really fantastic. So just trying to kind of navigate the market and kind of the world as it changes and how photography relates to how we live now.
So first of all, before I get into asking you some of the nitty gritty questions, I'm about 20 minutes from Nashville, so we are neighbors.
Perfect.
Good, sir.
Perfect.
Very exciting.
Perfect. We should have done this over coffee.
I know we totally could have and set up cameras and done a whole proper in-person podcast. We'll get there as the budget grows. We'll get to that point. But cool. So how did you get into photography in the first place? Not just wedding photography, but what got you started in the creative world?
Yeah, so I actually went to school for music. I was a musician for a very long time. Started being a professional musician at 17. And so when I went to music school, I had a recording class with a professor named Jeff Taylor, and he liked what I was doing in the recording class. We got along really well, and he was like, hey, come work with me at my studio. And it was a multimedia studio. It wasn't just music. So I ended up doing a lot of videography, a lot of editing. He started me off editing kind of cheesy Flash commercials. I mean, this is 2005. So, very young days on the internet, pre-YouTube, all of that stuff. So just kind of got a little editing. And then he was like, hey, I might need you to do some camera work. So here's some DVDs on camera work and figure this out. And so I studied kind of that way. They just kind of threw me into the fire. I've always been kind of interested in visual art, but I'm not a very good visual artist. I can't draw. I can't paint. Actually, one of my goals for the next 10 years is to go through the Bob Ross tapes and just paint a bunch of happy little trees and just have fun with it. But yeah, so when I was, about that time, my uncle actually gifted me a camera. I think I have it here. This is the the first camera my uncle ever gave me. It's a Nikon D100. Had no idea how to use this thing, but. And for everybody listening, I'm sure that's a very exciting segue. But
everyone's like, "Oh, Nikon."
yeah. Just the rattling of the. Oh yeah, I guess he's holding the camera. But yeah, and I kind of got into it a little bit, did a little bit of stuff, and then in 2018, 2019, my band was touring a lot. And I decided to get a camera to do some social media stuff with, and do some behind the scenes videos and just have fun with, and got really into it and started doing portraits for a lot of friends of mine. And then one day somebody called me up and they were like, "Hey, we love your portraits. What does it cost for you to shoot our wedding?" And I was like, I don't know. And then that's kind of how I got into it,
Wow, that's amazing. So it's interesting to hear kind of your backstory. You went to school for something completely unrelated and kind of were introduced to this by, it sounds like almost like a mentor. And one of my questions actually is like, have you ever had like an internship anywhere or somebody that kind of mentored you into this world? And to me, it kind of sounds like that professor did kind of like show you this world of like photography and videography and things like that, just to kind of get you excited about something, and out of necessity as well, which I feel like a lot of creatives end up, especially I'm a musician as well. So as somebody that's also in bands, like we do things out of necessity because we need them. Especially now when, you can't just be a musician now. You have to be a musician and a content creator and you have to do all these things, graphic designer. And I'm seeing this with some of my friends that are in bands that are trying to maybe keep from hiring a photographer to go on the road with them because financially it doesn't work for them at this time. So they're finding themselves picking up cameras and teaching themselves how to do these things. And it's really interesting to see this like transition from just being one type of creative to like a multifaceted creative. And do you still do music stuff, or are you just solely in the photo world?
Just for fun. I have a closet in my house full of a ridiculous amount of music gear. Luckily, we have big closets. But no, I mean, yeah, mostly what I do is photography, and it's weird transitioning, kind of doing that hard stop. COVID was a big deal for all of us who were, especially touring, and it really, it was about that time I met my wife, and life happens, priorities change and stuff like that. So I still love music. And I think the thing for me was what I loved about music was never the touring, or like I love playing, but I never really loved the hullabaloo, to use a word my grandfather would have used. But just the creating and the experimental nature of music, like that's what I always really loved about it, and exploring. And I feel that way about photography too. You had brought up that a lot of your friends are sort of doing this stuff on their own and kind of teaching themselves photography. And it is interesting once you start to do that kind of stuff where you realize what you can do for yourself, what you can't do for yourself, what you prefer to do. And I'm sure like a lot of us as creatives, the projects that we do for ourselves are the ones that always get on the back burner. You're always working for somebody else. You're always, I have to finish this thing. I got to do that thing. I got to do this thing. And then maybe next year I'll get to that thing that I really want to do. So it is a weird way to sort of live your life, where just by necessity, everything that you want to do is the stuff that you never have time to do,
Yep. Yeah, no, it's very interesting that you bring that up, actually. As a musician myself, I'm actually... I've been trying to give myself more time to do projects that I want to do, especially the second half of the year. I had a client of 7 years that I had to like break up with because of some internal like toxic type of personality traits that, it just wasn't working out anymore. And some stuff came up and I was like, I need to step away from this. But it was like a consistent freelancing job, which we're all seeking out. We're all seeking that consistency as freelancers to have a repeat client, for that duration of time. And it was great, but it was also like very difficult and like mentally challenging to like work with this specific person, just because our personalities clash so much. And when I like broke off from them, I told myself like, this will give me the opportunity to have some hours back where I can actually work on things for me for a change, which is like what I really eventually want to do, is to not do so much client work, but to build like, you know, a YouTube following that allows me to do things that I want to create, basically, right? And I'm working on a new music project. It's like a dark hip hop like type of project, because
Cool.
I'm in the metal world, but I love hip hop, and so right now I'm actually like gearing up to film music videos for this album that I'm finishing up, and it's been really cool to like dive in creatively into my own project that's like this big for a change, because like you said, like I always put my stuff on the back burner to do client work, and now I have no excuse. Now I like have to like make myself do this. For you, when you got into like photography as a freelancer, did you have a 9-to-5 job when you were doing that transition, or did you just kind of dive straight into the deep end? Because I know a lot of people that want to get into the freelancing world, they don't really understand that route. For example, a lot of people think they can just start doing photography and it will immediately take off and they'll be able to pay their rent off of it and everything. But I think a lot of people don't realize like you can't necessarily just do that unless you have some financial backing already built up.
Yeah. So I'm probably the worst example of this because when I was in music school, I had a professor who, you know, once we'd gotten through, he was my guitar professor. And once we had gotten through like the first couple of semesters where like everybody who'd ever picked a guitar in their life was in this class. And then he kind of peeled it back to like the 10 best people who were really serious about it. He kind of looked at us and he was like, everyone's going to tell you that you need to have something to fall back on. And the truth is, if you have something to fall back on, you will fall back on it. So the only way to succeed is to take away the safety net. And so I really have believed that and followed that my whole life. And sometimes it's like, I got no money. I'm in a city I've never been in before. I just moved here. I got a month to figure it out. And, you know, I have this month to make next month's rent, you know. So, you know, COVID was kind of the big reset button for everybody in the fact that, especially for me, I was on the road 200 days a year with the band. And so when COVID happened, we were in Florida playing a show. It was like March 10th, I think, like March 9th through the 14th was our gig. And the 15th was the day everything shut down. So we finished playing and we're sitting at the kitchen table watching all this stuff happen. Like, is this going to be a thing? Is this really bad? Is this as bad as everybody says it is? Is it worse than everybody says it is? And I was sitting there kind of the opinion, like, yeah, I think this is going to be bad. And so we kind of saw in real time everybody at that festival go from, you know, day one, COVID, it's just overblown, and, you know, it's just the mainstream media trying to drum up nonsense, and then there were a little bit less people there on day two, and all these wusses staying home, and, you know, we're tough, we're not going to get it, and then little smaller crowd on day three, and then news started to come out that some people from New York were there and maybe they had COVID and they were doing the tracing, and then day four, like maybe we had a quarter of the size of the people and we got that paycheck, man, and they didn't cancel any of our dates, and then it was just like nope, and we had the drummer and I had to hop a flight home, and I remember my wife was house sitting for a friend of ours, and she's like, I just tried to go get groceries and all I could get was boxed potatoes and a turkey. Like that's all they had left at the grocery store on like March 15th. So immediately when I got home, I started applying for like the PPP loans and unemployment. Like Tennessee was great with unemployment for musicians and stuff like that. So I managed to get in on the first round of funding for the PPP. And that really carried us through, you know, a lot of the difficulty that we would have had. My wife at the time was a veterinary technician, so she was an essential worker, so she had income that whole time. Right. And I was like, we got this, you know, about 15 grand. Let's live off of that as long as we can. We'll put your paycheck in the savings and let's try to see what works. And that was the time when I really made the transition into photography. But I got it going really quick because I mean, 15,000 is 15,000, but it's not that much money, especially when you're supporting a family on it over the course of what ended up being,
Right.
8 or 10 months. So, I to go back to your original question, like, no, I pretty much dove into this head first. I did have that leeway of that government funding, but at the same
Sure.
time, it was very much like going from, okay, we're supposed to have all these gigs on the books, and maybe I can make this work, and maybe I can shoot a couple of weddings and whatever, to, nope, I got to book like 20 weddings, and we're gonna do it, so.
Yeah. So when it comes to like finding your niche, I'm always curious about this. Like, why did you choose that niche specifically, especially during that time? Like, their weddings were kind of difficult to like have during COVID, and so I'm curious, like, how'd you find that your niche specifically, and what made you kind of niche up? Because for me, like, a lot of my clients see me as like a Swiss Army knife of creation. I shoot everything. I shoot music, I shoot sports, I shoot conferences, literally everything. Robotics, like just random stuff.
That's so cool.
Yeah, how did you find your niche, and what was it about like weddings that kind of made you feel drawn to them?
Well, I sort of, when I got into photography, it was just kind of like I would see some stuff that I liked, and then, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then I would read some stuff, and I'd watch a couple of YouTube videos, and then it was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And oh, I like this person, and I like this style. And it just kind of was that I was drawn to, all of my favorite photographers just kind of ended up being wedding photographers. And one of the things
Sure.
that I really love about wedding photography is that over the course of a wedding day, you have to be a product photographer. You have to shoot rings, you have to shoot shoes, you have to shoot dresses. You have to shoot invitations and flat lays. You have to be a documentarian, so you're doing a lot of photojournalism and pull out the long lenses and get mom and dad's reaction and get people hugging that haven't seen each other for a long time and capture the day naturally as it unfolds. You have to be a great portrait photographer. You want your bride and your groom to look their absolute best. You want to capture those moments and kind of know what you're doing to make people feel comfortable in front of a camera, to make people trust you, to get genuine reactions. You have to be in my case, I do video as well. So I'm also doing videography and cinematography. You almost have to have some real estate chops because you're doing empty room setups and you're doing the venue, and a lot of it is sharing these photos with the venues, with the florists, with the hair and makeup artists, and making sure that they all look good in the photos too. So really being a wedding photographer is sort of this really mixed bag of all of these things that you have to be good at. And admittedly, some days I'm better at some of them than others, but that's kind of the nature of weddings. You never know what you're going to go into, and it could be an absolutely gorgeous wedding venue, and maybe they didn't have a florist, so there's really not much in terms of decor, or they might be doing it at a public park, but it's a $10,000 dress, so you want to try to make this dress look absolutely amazing in the middle of like, a state park in Wisconsin, which we had to do earlier this year. So there's a lot of challenges and a lot of kind of thinking on your feet. And I really like that kind of aspect to it.
As somebody that shoots weddings like kind of sparsely, I mostly like shoot friends' weddings these days, just because that's not really like my favorite thing to do. It just personally isn't. But the way you just described being a wedding photographer and videographer makes it sound so much more than just like taking photos of a couple, getting married, the stress of the day. Like you said, your real estate, you got to have real estate shop. You got to kind of have like this, like I was talking about earlier, like this Swiss Army knife of creativity within you. So that's very interesting, like your perspective on that, especially talking to someone like myself that doesn't shoot weddings very often, that just kind of like gives me more ideas and more of a perspective of like that world. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's definitely super insightful. And I know there's a lot of people that listen to the show that do want to kind of go into the wedding photography world, but don't know where to start and how to get into that. So can you give some advice on how to like break into the wedding photography world? Like, where are you getting your jobs? Is it all word of mouth? Are you in Facebook groups? Like, where are you going to find these jobs?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the best piece of advice, I could kind of give is just that, To paraphrase The Simpsons, there's the right way, the wrong way, and my way, which is just the wrong way but faster. So the right way is to second shoot and to assist with people. Find a photographer you love in the area. If anybody's in the Tennessee area, we travel all over, but feel free to reach out to me. And I'm always happy to share what I know and to help people along. And if you want to come assist me on a wedding day, I'm happy to do that. The wrong way, quote unquote, wrong way, is to kind of jump in head first and not really know what you're doing. That's kind of what I did. I had some opportunities in which I was able to sort of capitalize on things being a little delayed because of COVID, and I had some friends getting married, and maybe they had to move their wedding dates, and maybe their photographer wasn't available. And having said that, I still treated those days with a ton of respect and a ton of understanding and kind of giving myself the time to fail. And I think that that's important because even on a wedding day, if I take 5,000 photos on a wedding day, the couple's really only going to see like 500 to 700. So I can take 4,000 terrible photos. Hopefully I don't, but give yourself the time to fail. If you put yourself in a position where every photo has to be a banger and you don't know what you're doing, then you're going to run into trouble. So low pressure environments, I mean, there's no such thing as a low pressure wedding, but there are people who just don't really have a budget, or really don't value photography that much. And if you can say, hey man, I'll come out and shoot it for, $500, $1,000. I'll do it for free. Do a couple for free if you want. And just kind of get the feel for it. It is not for everybody. And it is very stressful and it is very hard. Sure. But it's very rewarding and it's a lot of fun.
So as a photographer, I feel like with the world of social media and, things like Instagram or whatever, I feel like a lot of photographers are forgetting the excitement of print, like printing their photography and like delivering that to a client or even putting it up in your own house. Like, do you print your photography? And if so, what is it about that excites you?
Yeah, I absolutely do. Actually, for anybody watching on video, that's one of my pieces up behind me on the wall. Not that you can see it, my big head's in the way, but I think print is really important. And I think that if you want a really great example of how temporary digital photographs are, go try to see your MySpace photos. Go try to see any of that stuff from 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. People don't remember that the iPhone was invented in 2008. People don't remember that anything before that was like, you had like a Coolpix little point and shoot and maybe you scanned your photos in, but how many of your devices do you have to use a dongle for because they don't have any USB-C ports on them? Or how many of your devices, like how many different Apple adapters, like try to plug in an iPhone from 6 years ago. You don't even have that adapter anymore. Yeah. The one thing that your kids are always going to have, hopefully, is paper and their eyes and these things that can be passed down from generation to generation. So if you have good quality work, you should absolutely have it printed because there's really nothing like holding that in your hand and being like, oh my God, I did this, or this is me if you're a client. Because that's something that you don't just want these photos to live in a spam folder. You don't want them to, you've changed domain hosts or, God forbid something happens and some of these web hosting companies go out of business. I mean, if Facebook ever goes out of business, there's 10 years of civilization that historians are never going to be able to get back, so it's so important to have that in a physical form.
Yeah. And for those listening that are younger, MySpace was a website we used before Facebook. I remember getting invited to Facebook, and I was like, that'll never last.
Yeah, you had to be a member of you had to attend a college.
You had to be invited.
Well, you had to attend a college, and your college had to be on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, my friend's sister invited me, and I was like, what is Facebook? That's dumb. It's crazy. It's just crazy how like things change. But yeah, I mean, I think printing your work is so special and so important. I explore abandoned places, so most of the photos I have printed around my house are of abandoned places that I've explored, and I've got 2 photography books about urban exploring, and like I do sell like my photo books, but I will say, like, anybody that's like, oh, I want to make a photography book, it is the least financially fruitful thing that I do, but I get the most value out of signing them and mailing them to people, so I don't care. Yeah. But just know, if you want to go into like photo books, like it's very difficult to like succeed with like just photography books, but it is cool. I get a lot of fulfillment out of them personally. So let's move into the practicality of your job of being a wedding photographer. Where are you storing your images and your videos? Like, what is your storage process like? Are you on hard drives? Do you use a cloud for everything? Are you using a NAS storage unit? Like, what are you doing as far as storage goes? Because if anybody knows, like, wedding photography, like you said, you're taking 4,000, 5,000 photos and cutting those down, but like, where are you storing all this stuff?
Yeah.
And for how long?
So yeah, that is the question, isn't it? So I literally just dropped $2,000 on a NAS storage unit to finally connect to that. And like, anybody who thinks this is a fun hobby, yeah, it's fun, but you got to have a lot of disposable income because, man. Oh yeah. Whew, but yeah, so I have a kind of an insane backup process. So when I have a wedding day, I download everything onto onto the NAS, but then I also duplicate it onto a secondary, just a backup drive. And the only thing that goes on that backup drive are the raw files. Like, I don't have any, I think I have like a backup of my Lightroom catalog, but I don't have any like Photoshop documents or anything. It's just the raw files. And that I have a changeable hard disk drive on my desk that's about 16 terabytes. When that fills up, I pull that hard drive out, I put it in a plastic hard drive case, I date the last date that was used, and then I put it in my closet. So I have cased hard drives of, if I ever need to get into those raw files, I have them set aside there. The NAS is backed up to Dropbox, so I have too much. I have a lot of stuff on that NAS drive that then gets backed up to Dropbox. Anything that's on my computer gets backed up to the NAS using Time Machine, and then also it gets backed up to Backblaze. So Backblaze is just a backup software. It's kind of like Dropbox, but you can't really get into it. It's just for backups. So that gets backed up to Backblaze. And then I have another server that's a Mac Mini where it's kind of an archival. So any of the the completed projects and things like that I do, that gets copied onto this other. It's not really a NAS, but it's kind of a NAS because I have it on a server off the Mac Mini. So I have basically 2 network storages. I use 2 separate cloud services, and then I have 1 physical hard drive backup. So theoretically, I have 5 copies of everything at all times. Yeah.
And to have that redundancy is so important, just because, like you were talking about earlier, if one of these cloud services goes out of business and you can't access your stuff, you're going to want it in multiple places. How did you come up with this system? Because I know there's obviously a million iterations of what you're doing that I've gotten tons of people with their own process. So how did you come up with that system?
Pure paranoia.
I like the honesty.
It's a variation on the 3-2-1 system where you're supposed to have three copies, two in a physical location and one off-site,
Mhm.
theoretically. So I try to not only have multiple physical locations where I'm doing these things. Now, in my particular case, I don't have an offsite location, but that's why I have everything kind of backed up to both Backblaze and to Dropbox. So hopefully, in the event that something happens, I will have at least one cloud copy of this. And then when the photos get delivered, they stay in that gallery basically forever. So I have an unlimited plan with a company called Pixie Set. So those galleries just stay up. So hopefully that's technically 6 locations where those photos could possibly be.
And that Pixie set, if you have like an affiliate link that people can like sign up for and get you like some commission or something, please give that to me so that I can put that in the description of the podcast if people are
Yeah,
interested in finding a permanent housing for their deliverable files. That'd be awesome.
yeah, absolutely.
So how did you you talked a little bit, you kind of touched on it a little bit about pricing for weddings and things like that, when you're just starting out to do $500,000. How did you find your value and your worth, and how long did that take to kind of get to where you were happy with you know the amount you were making per wedding, or maybe you're not happy with it still, because I know that's an ongoing kind of like challenge to
Yeah.
find the right price point.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of different advice, and this is something I'm actually really passionate about as a photographer. So, again, to anybody who's sort of questioning, where they are in their business, how to make this a real business, please reach out to me. I have stuff that I can send you and it'll help. So, but having said that, kind of the common wisdom is a lot of, I think step one is always, well, if I could replace my day job income with photography, then that would be great. I'll quit my day job. I'll just make the same amount. And I think people do that, and then they go out of business very quickly, because what you don't really understand is that, okay, if let's say you made $40,000 a year at your day job, you actually have to make about 120,000 in order to keep paying yourself 40,000, because somewhere between 15 and 30% is going to go for taxes, and somewhere between 30 and 40% of that should go back into your business to make sure that you have the materials you need to continue going forward. So if you think that you're going to just replace your day job income, it's really not going to work out that way. The second thing is, when you are able to provide this service, you always want to keep improving the quality of the service. So that means more education, more practice, more skill, more equipment, different lenses, different cameras, different lighting, constantly leveling up your services, including printed albums, including additional sessions, including things like that, especially if you're in the wedding photography industry. So whenever you level up your services, then you also should increase your pricing. And the third thing is, it's very, very important to know, kind of going back to that first point, but in a little bit of a different way, when you're a freelancer, everything is a business expense. The sandwich you ate for lunch is a business expense, because if you can't feed yourself, you can't show up to the wedding. If you can't put a roof over your head, you can't edit that music video. You can't do any of these things as a freelancer if you don't have a place to live, if you don't have food to eat, if you don't have clothes on your back. And so having a breakdown of literally everything you spend, everything you could potentially spend, your rent, your car insurance, your car payment, the price of gas, how much are you putting away for retirement, because that's very important. We might have Roth IRAs, but we don't have 401ks. What is it going to take to replace your gear if it breaks? You want to account for that. What is your per job cost? Do you have to rent things? And when you break that down, I promise, if you haven't done that before, you will be shocked at how much you need to charge in order to continue to keep this boat moving forward. So in terms of finding my own pricing, that's always the balance that I'm kind of moving around. It's like, how much do I need to make? How much do my ideal clients want to pay? And how much do I need to pay to find those ideal clients? And hopefully it becomes this virtuous cycle where I can do the amount of weddings that I want for the price that I like, and everybody's happy. But it's not often the case. And this is a very tough year for wedding photographers. Election years tend to be pretty tough. But I've been hearing it.
Yep. I think that's across the board for freelancers. I've been, kind of hearing that it's been a difficult year all across the board for freelancers. There are ebbs and flows in this game, and I feel like people need to know that also when going into this, that there are ups and downs. There are seasons, like you've got wedding season, and that was another thing I wanted to touch on. Like, are you shooting all year round? Do you have like a season? And if so, like, what do you do in the off season? Are you just solely focusing on planning for the next season? Like, how does that work? Because I know with wedding photography, it can be very seasonal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is very seasonal. And just touching on the last point again really quick, it's like, when you have a day job, you have that weekly, bi-weekly, once a month, whatever, you have that consistent paycheck. You don't necessarily have that when you're a freelancer. So you have to know that, like, hey, I might have made $30,000 this month. You can't just go buy yourself a new car, because next month you might make $2,000. You have to put that away. So for wedding seasons, it's a little bit different because we travel all over the country. I've done weddings everywhere from South Carolina to Washington State, from California to Virginia. So literally everywhere.
Sure.
But typically what I find is that in the South, nobody really gets married in the summer. July and August are very slow. And then December and January tend to be pretty slow. February is a little hit or miss. And then there's a little bit of a lull, like April might be a little bit of a lull. So the top times for shooting are going to be like May, June, and September, October are probably the busiest times for shooting. And the times for booking are basically Christmas to Valentine's Day. Is engagement season.
Sure.
Everybody gets engaged between Christmas and Valentine's Day. So,
makes sense.
But if I'm shooting, I shoot about 30 weddings a year. So there's a lot of time that I need to spend editing and preparing, especially doing video and photo. Luckily, I have a video editor that I work with who's fantastic. So hopefully I can just ship off the videos to him. Don't really have to worry about it too much while I edit the photos, and hopefully they're done at about the same time and I can present those to the client. Otherwise it would take me twice as long.
Of course. Yeah. And what made you make the decision to bring somebody on your team, like a video editor? Because, some people have a hard time letting go of that, but they don't realize that it can give you time back. And the most valuable thing we have is our time, So how long did it take you to decide to bring somebody onto your team?
I think when you're a freelancer, one of the biggest things that we struggle with as freelancers is getting through the parts that you hate to get to the parts that you love. And it's not that I hate editing. I don't hate editing. It's just a part of the process that I don't care to do myself. It's not that I don't care about it, but I don't care to do it. If I can avoid it. Every so often I'll come back from a wedding and be like, oh my God, I got to do this. Like, I'm so stoked to do this video myself. But realistically, if there's only so many hours in a day, and if I want to have time to, edit the photos I need to edit, do all the other stuff that I need to do, including, social media posting, connecting with wonderful other freelancers on Threads, or, market myself. One of the things that's really important is that you have a choice whether to work on your business or in your business. And you can't do both. So every hour that you spend editing, every hour that you spend delivering, every hour that you spend shooting, really, those are not working on your business. It's not getting you new clients. It's not exposing you to new people. It's not doing anything like that. So either you can be the kind of person that really loves to work on their business and then start to sort of freelance out or bring in people to help you with the stuff to run in your business. Or if you're very lucky, you can find somebody who's very, very good at working on the business, and then you're free to do all the creative stuff that you'd like to do. But even then, like, if you're shooting, if I'm doing an 8-hour wedding or whatever, it can take me weeks, months to finish the edit and to go through. So I don't want to rush that process because, oh, I have to make 27 social media posts this month, so I just didn't get your wedding done on time, So that's kind of one of the decisions that you have to make as a freelancer. And that's true in any industry. It's like if you're recording an album as a musician, like, are you going to play everything yourself and you're going to write all the songs yourself and you're produce everything yourself and you're going to distribute everything yourself and you're going to burn all the CDs? Or I mean, it's impossible. There's just not enough time, know? So exactly. you just outsource what you can and outsource what you don't love doing and try to focus on the stuff that really helps you out so that you have enough time to, hang out with your spouse or play with your cats or whatever,
And then can you talk about the importance of deposits, of taking a deposit before you commit to doing this job, why you take deposits and how you take those deposits? And also if you could touch on, you talked about expenses, like where are you tracking those expenses as well? Are you using a software for everything? So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So here's very important tip of the day. It is not a deposit. It is a retainer. Because deposits by law are refundable and retainers by law are not. True. So from now on, we are no longer taking deposits. We are all only taking retainers. So a retainer is very important because it is the promise of future work and the promise of future income. People who don't have any money in the game with you, they don't have any skin in the game, they have no commitment to you whatsoever. So if you are not sitting on a retainer and a sizable retainer, then there's no promise. There's an incentive for them to cancel. So for instance, if you sell a $10,000 service and someone wants to put $100 down as a retainer, there's no, like, if they walk away from you, they've just saved themselves $9,900. There's no skin there. But if they give you a $5,000 retainer, then they lose $5,000 if they walk away. They don't save money. So you have to make your retainer sizable enough to really have that fiscal commitment. So that is very, very important. Also, there's work that happens between the day that they sign the contract and the day that we shoot their wedding or whatever it is you do as a freelancer. So I am still paying taxes. I'm still paying my rent. I am still doing all of that stuff. I'm planning. I'm doing questionnaires. I am improving my skills during that time. And all of those things go into your ability to provide a superior level of service to your clients and your customers. And so that is all important. Keeping the business going, keeping the lifeblood going, improving the business, growing the business, that is all valuable to your future client. A really good example of this is I've booked weddings 2 or 3 years in advance. The wedding, the photographer that they booked, while it is me, is not the same photographer that they're going to get. They're going to get a much, much, much better photographer by the time that I am there to shoot their wedding. I will hopefully have gotten better in 3 years. So if they're booking you, if you're like, oh my God, I just need the money. I really need like whatever it takes, I'll do it for $1,500. Okay. $1,500 in 2001 money, but not $1,500 in 2005 money. Like that's a different amount of money and that's a different service that you're providing for them. So you should always quote and book and get the retainer as if you are responsible to future you. Because I will tell you, there are weddings I've shown up and gone, oh man, I way undercharged for this, because I booked it just so much earlier in my career. So, quote as though you are going to make future you happy and get those retainers as though you're going to make future you happy. Because it might feel real good to get that amount of money today, but it might feel real bad in 2 years when you have to actually complete that side of the contract. I think I got a little off on a tangent. Definitely. I hope that answered your question.
No, that's amazing. And I don't know in your journey where you made the differentiation between deposit and retainer. Sounds like it may have been a situation where you had maybe had a client that was like, well, deposits are legally refundable, or maybe
Nope.
someone you know.
Luckily, I do very well learning from the mistakes of others.
That's the key here. That's why this podcast is a thing, because like not only am I trying to help other people, but I'm also trying to help myself selfishly. Yeah. Like I want to learn too. You know what I mean? This is my education, you know? So one of my final questions to wrap everything up is, what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started all of this?
I wish I knew how much fun this was going to be, you know, when I first started. Going from musician to photographer, I had some friends who, you know, the drummer in my band was married to a photographer, fantastic photographer. My wife, she was friends with a bunch of photographers, fantastic photographers, making really good livings. And that was one of the incentives kind of for me to go, hey, you know, I'm on the road 200 days a year and I'm not making very much money. Like, I'm not making a lot of money. Maybe I can make more staying at home and being a photographer. And so when I got into this, I was like, okay, this is a business, this is a business, this is a business, which is still a good plan. And I had booked like 8 weddings before I ever shot one. And in my head, I'm going, what if I hate this? What if this sucks? You know, like now I got to do it 8 times. But luckily I love it. It's great. And weddings, as you know, are not for everybody. They are a very, very specific type of photography. And so it's a ton of fun, and meeting all these people and getting to work with these people. I mean, you're hanging out with people on the best day of their life. It's great. Providing that you spend the time to connect with people and know who you're getting into it with, you know. Sure. But yeah, I think the 2 best pieces of advice that I ever got was right when I was starting my photography journey. And the first was from a photographer on YouTube named Ted Forbes. And in one of his videos, he said, your level of ability has nothing to do with your level of success. And that really stuck with me, because there are a lot of unbelievably talented photographers making no money. And same thing in music, and same thing in every artistic endeavor. You know, most professional painters die broke. You know, like nobody talks about how much money Monet had, you know. And the second piece of advice was, most people say, I love being a photographer, I'm going to start a business. And what you should say is, I want to start a business, I'm going to be a photographer. And you have to treat this like a business. Whatever you do, whether it's photography or music or art or anything, content creation, influencing, you know, whatever that means today, it is a business, and you have to know what it takes to run that business. Otherwise, you're just flailing in the dark. And that's why so many of these businesses kind of fail or never get to the level that they could, is just because you're doing it for the love of the game, which is wonderful, but that's called a hobby. And you should have fun with your hobbies, but don't try to, you know, when people start relying on you for things, then you have a responsibility to make sure that you follow through on those things. So yeah, treat it like a business. Very important.
Something I wanted to start implementing in the end of the podcast is to ask my guest if they have a question for the next guest, not knowing who that is, but knowing the subject matter of what goes on here on the podcast. Do you have a question that you would like to ask the next guest?
Oh man. Okay. So for an entrepreneur, freelancer, solo freelancer, what is one thing that you know if you did, it would be amazing for your business, but you just can't bring yourself to do it?
Ooh. Okay, now you have to answer your own question.
So for me, I hate social media. I hate it. I hate it so much
Okay.
with a passion. My Instagram feed is super dead. And I just feel like it is the worst impulses that we have as a people. Or when you go on there to try to actually be genuine, people try to tear you down, or
Sure.
it's there's a meme somewhere, I'm sure, of look at this shiny new thing I have, and then somebody knocking it out of your hands and stomping on it. That's what social media is, and it's this constant pressure. We get hundreds of notifications every day from social media. You get terrible comments. You get people trying to sell you stuff. You get people just it's so transactional and negative most of the time.
Sure.
And I don't like it at all. And I know that there are a lot of photographers and a lot of people who do really, really, really well on social media. They're posting 3 times a day and they're communicating with people, and they spend all their time on Instagram and they get tons of people that way. I just don't. And it's like every time I open one of those apps on my phone, I'm like, ugh. Even if it's just for myself, like, just to see what my friends are doing. Like,
Sure.
My sister posted something, but if I spent more time on social media, I would definitely see some benefit. But yeah, it's just hard for me. So I'm hiring somebody to do it for me. So there we go. There's
Smart. See? Smart.
Yeah,
Outsource.
Going back to outsourcing. Yeah.
So if people want to follow along your journey, please let them know your website or your social media. Or if they potentially want to hire you to maybe shoot their wedding, where can they go find you and how can they get in touch?
Yep. So you can find me at Jordan, Jordan, Reopke, Roep as in Peter, Ke, photography.com. Jordan Reopke Photography is also all of my social media handles. Hopefully you will see more action happening in the social media space once whoever ends up doing it starts doing it. But yeah, that's where you can find me. And I travel all over the country, all over the world. If you're getting married in Italy or France or somewhere cool like that, hit me up. I'd love to give you a deal on some incredible wedding photography. You got to pay for my travel though. But we'll talk about it.
Jordan, thank you so much for coming on Project Freelance and for sharing your insights and your story with everyone here. Appreciate you.
Happy to, Kay. Appreciate you too.
All right, guys, that was my episode with Jordan Reopke. If you want to follow his journey, his links are down in the description. I greatly appreciate you, Jordan, for coming on and sharing your insights and your story with the Project Freelance audience here. If you want to come on the show, please hit me up at contact@justtheletterk.com. And if you want to follow my journey, my website and my Instagram and my TikTok and all the things are down in the description. Thank you guys for tuning into Project Freelance. If you liked it, give it a rating and a thumbs up. It really helps the podcast grow and to find a broader audience of amazing listeners just like you. I'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you for tuning in. Stay strong. Keep enduring. I'll see you soon.